Hey folks, so earlier today as I'm recording this, and possibly earlier today as you're watching this, it depends on when I release this video, I haven't really decided, and it also depends on when you're watching it, if you're watching it on the same day I release it or not. But earlier today as I'm recording this, I released a video called Guns Own Us that is about the gun problem in the United States, gun violence, gun-related deaths, etc. And I say a couple of things in that video that I've said before. One is that the guns are the problem, that the proliferation of guns in the United States is actually the problem, is the reason why we have so many gun-related deaths, so many gun-related murders and suicides and accidental deaths and mass shootings and school shootings and all the other awful, awful things that occur in this country with shocking and also, unfortunately, numbing regularity. And I also said there's no such thing as a responsible gun owner. And I got some pushback from that, especially that last one, saying there's no such thing as a responsible gun owner. And I expected that because I've said that sort of thing before. And there are certain people, mostly gun owners, who have a problem with that. And usually I don't personally respond to those objections because I figure, first of all, it's not up to me. Like, gun policy in the United States clearly is not my call. I don't have that authority. I have not ever been consulted. So if you are a gun owner and you feel compelled to leave a comment on my video because I said there's no such thing as a responsible gun owner, and you feel like you need to come in and defend yourself or defend the concept of gun ownership against a guy on YouTube saying that that's a problem and people shouldn't do that, I figure as long as you're respectful about it and constructive about it, leave your comment and it can, stand on its own and other people can reply to you if they want, but I'm not going to involve myself in that conversation because I don't really see the point. We're just going to agree to disagree on this. You think that you are a responsible gun owner. I say you're not, as a matter of principle, and it's just gonna be that way. So what's the point of arguing about it? But there was one particular group of gun owners that have left a couple of comments under that video that I didn't specifically mention in the video. I did talk about leftist pro-gun people, and this would be kind of a subcategory of them, but I didn't specify this group, and it's a particular enough group and a particular enough kind of experience that I thought it would be worth addressing them directly and specifically and explaining what I think about that and what I think about them as gun owners. And it's people who are from marginalized communities who own firearms because they genuinely feel that they need a gun to protect themselves. They are, let's say they're a queer person I saw this example was brought up a couple of times, like a queer person who lives in a deep red part of the country where it's just nothing but conservatives and Republicans and they feel very threatened by living in that area and being surrounded by people with those beliefs and those attitudes toward queer people. And they feel safer if they have a gun, which I completely understand. I mean, I've never had that experience, so I can't say I fully understand it. I've never been in that situation. I'm almost as privileged as you can be in this country. I'm a white, cis, hetero male, relatively healthy, able-bodied, cognitively typical as far as I can tell. And so I don't, I've never had that experience. I can't speak to that experience, and therefore it is not for me as a privileged person to say to a less privileged person, no, it doesn't matter whether you feel safe or not. You still shouldn't have a gun. You're still part of the problem. They didn't ask me. They didn't seek my permission or my approval. They don't need it. And I am not trying to offer it to them now or deny it to them. I'm just saying it's not my call, right? But I still believe that there is no such thing as a responsible gun owner, and that includes everybody who owns a gun for any reason. How do I reconcile that? There was a story that someone told in the comments. They said that their girlfriend is a trans woman and had a really scary experience in an Uber. She was in an Uber, and the Uber driver noticed that she was trans and refused to let her out of the car. Like when it came to where her stop was supposed to be, he didn't let her out. And who knows what this asshole had in mind? Who knows what would have happened, except for this trans woman happened to be armed. She had a pistol, and she introduced the Uber driver to the pistol, and very shortly after that, the Uber ride was over. And she was able to get out and go on with her life, and she was not harmed in any way, at least not physically. I'm sure it was very traumatic, but she was okay. She was able to get herself out of that situation. And having the gun was essential to that, because it allowed her to flip the power dynamic and say, no, we're doing what I say. I'm the one with the gun. You're going to let me out. And that's what happened. And of course, I'm not going to say she shouldn't have done that, or she shouldn't have, had that gun or whatever. It's not for me to say to a marginalized person, the way you got yourself out of a potentially life-threatening situation was the wrong way. Right? I'm not saying that. But I am still saying that everyone is included in the "there are no responsible gun owners" statement. And the way I reconcile that is like this. To me, it's analogous to the idea that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, which is a very common idea, especially on the left, and which is an idea that I hold to, that I think is accurate. I would say that's true. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism. The system is arranged in such a way that even if you don't realize it, even if you would choose to do something else if it were possible, it is not possible for you to participate in the capitalist system and survive and try to live a decent, comfortable life without contributing to harm in some way or another. Like there's no way you can avoid it. The system is so complex and so morally compromised and so corrupted that you can't do it, right? It's not an option to participate in capitalism in a perfectly ethical way. And I suppose there's a similar principle at play when it comes to marginalized people and gun ownership. You are a person who belongs to a community that has been oppressed and has been targeted for violence and for oppression and for dehumanization. Statistically speaking, trans people, queer people in general, are much more vulnerable to violence, are much more likely to be victims of all kinds of violence, are much more likely to be victims of lethal violence, to be victims of murder and sex crimes and all kinds of other just absolutely atrocious things. They are an especially vulnerable group. And if you are a member of that especially vulnerable group and you think, okay, I am actually safer with a gun than without one because the threats that are around you, the potential threats that you are surrounded by, are such that it's actually safer for you to have a gun, because if you have a gun, then you can ward off those threats better than if you were unarmed. And the added danger of having a gun, which statistically there's always an added danger of having a gun, but in your case, that balances out because the danger of you without a gun is greater than the danger of you with a gun because of all these other factors. If you are in that situation, and again, that's your judgment call. I am not going to claim the right to tell you, okay, yes, in your case it was fine, but in your case, no, you're not sufficiently threatened to justify having a firearm. Like, that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just saying, if you are in that situation and that's the reason you have a gun, and especially if you have lived through a situation like my commenter's girlfriend, where you actually were in a situation where your life was in danger and the fact that you had a gun enabled you to get out of that situation with your life, I'm not going to tell you that you did anything wrong, even though I still say overall, as a general principle, that it is irresponsible to own a gun. Anytime someone feels like their best recourse is to go get a gun, that is another sign of how we have failed as a society. If we were doing what we were supposed to do, then people wouldn't feel the need for that. Trans people wouldn't feel like they had to arm themselves in order to increase their safety. But they do, because we have failed them as a society. And as long as we continue to fail them as a society, it's not my place to tell them not to do that. But at the same time, I'm not going to tell them to do that either, because the proliferation of firearms is also a major, major problem in this country, and I am not going to encourage people to contribute to that. But if people feel like it's the best option for them because of the particular situation they are in, because of the threats that they feel against them because of who they are, and the prejudice that is directed toward people like them, then it is not for me to judge them. So, anyway, I hope that clears that up. Maybe I only made it even more muddled, but in my head it makes sense. And the analogy to the impossibility of ethical consumption under capitalism, it makes sense to me. So hopefully it makes sense to you as well. It's a broken, fucked up world. And sometimes people who are the most vulnerable within this broken, fucked up world feel that it is necessary to protect themselves in ways that I think are contributing to a broader problem. But in their specific situation, it is understandable because they deal with a much higher than average danger to themselves and to their lives as they just try to live their lives. So it is not for me to judge them, and I don't hold it, not that it should matter, not that I think it does matter, but I don't hold it against people in that situation. I don't think that they're of lower character or anything like that. I just think it's a sad commentary on the state of our nation, on the state of our society, and a reminder of all of the things we need to fix, not just the gun problem, but a whole bunch of other stuff, so that maybe someday, at least a lot fewer people, it's too much to hope for to say that nobody will feel threatened in that way, that nobody will be in that situation, but at least a lot fewer people will be in that situation where they feel like, the danger I face on a daily basis is so great that I would actually be safer with a gun than without one. That's a really, really terrible state of affairs. And boy, it would be great if we could do something about that.